Good evening, everyone. So it's just now 5:30, and we will go ahead and get started. First off, I would like to thank you all so much for joining us to learn about the why and how it motivates success. We do have some really exciting stuff for you tonight with two great presenters, but just before we jump in, a few housekeeping items. You are all muted on the call, so we can't hear verbally any comments or questions. If you do have questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen, and you may actually need to escape out of full screen mode to see that box. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have about 15 minutes to answer questions. If we don't get to all of them, we will be replying to those throughout the remainder of the week. And last but not least, the webinar will be recorded, so you will be sent a follow-up email with the link. You can view it at any time, or you can share it with colleagues if you would like as well. So with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce Dr. Kim Kutsch, CEO and founder of Oral BioTech and the CariFree system. Dr. Kutsch has been successfully practicing dentistry for over 30 years and still practices 3 days a week here in Albany, Oregon. And he has an incredible passion for what he does and his vision to create effective camera protocols. And that continues to drive him in his research to improve caries diagnosis and treatment. So with that, Dr. Kutsch, I will let you do the honors and introduce our guest and co-presenter tonight, Dr. Blatchford.
All right, thank you, Kendall, and welcome everybody tonight. I'm so honored that you are spending this next hour with Dr. Blatchford and I. Bill Blatchford actually was one of the first real dentists that I met when I graduated from dental school, and he was practicing in Corvallis, Oregon, and had the most successful practice in Corvallis. And I was a young, new graduated dentist, and so I got to know Bill immediately. And I would take him to lunch about once a month and say, "Bill, what do I do? How do I do this? What do I do about that?" And most of my questions were about business, not clinical so much as how do I run this business that I now have. And so, Bill, that's been 35 years ago that I met you. And
yeah, it's amazing, Kim. It doesn't seem like that long ago.
Bill's an incredible dentist. He has been coaching practices for 25 years, Bill?
We'll say 25 years. I practiced 20 years, so we kind of overlapped there for a while.
Yep. I don't know how many books you've written, but it's a lot, and you've certainly provided me with a lot of insight, and you've inspired me, Bill. So I'm excited tonight to take on this topic of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
So, one of the things that we're trying to do with our webinar series is, of course, a lot of it's been focused on dental caries, obviously. That's my huge interest in dentistry. But I came across, actually, Simon Sinek's book was published in 2009, and John Kutsch played his TED Talk at his annual meeting, I think 3 years ago. And I listened to it, and I thought that's really interesting, but it wasn't until last year that I read the book that I really dug down and got real clear, and even with my team at CariFree, about why do we do this. I want to make sure we're all really clear about why we're here. Why is this important? Why does it matter? Why do we get out of the bed in the morning, and why do we go do this? And then I started to get really clear about why do I do what I do in my dental practice. Like, why does my life look the way that it does? And as I was going through this whole thing, and I talked to Bill and talked to him about reading the book, and I thought, this would make a great webinar, because it really, what Bill does in terms of risk assessment and coaching really looks a lot like what I do in terms of risk assessment and wellness coaching with my own patients in terms of dental caries. So, the question is, why listen to us tonight? And I want to start with why in terms of when I look at my patients, like, why does their teeth look the way they do? Because if I can answer the why question, I have an opportunity to really help them. And I think, Bill, one of the things that you help your clients with is, why does your practice look the way it does? Why do you want to change? Why does your life look the way that it does?
That's correct. And unless you know the why, you won't change.
Yep. So the one thing that I really got from Simon Sinek, and if you haven't had the opportunity, just Google him or up on YouTube and pull up his TED Talk. And if you haven't seen it, listen to his TED Talk, because most companies get focused on, and I mean even we as practitioners get focused on what we do and how we do it. I mean, you know, I'm headed to Denver midwinter this week, and I mean, literally all the lectures are going to be about, you know, new restorative techniques and new bonding agents and how we're going to do this new procedure. But we really miss the focus of why are we doing this in the first place, and why are we, you know, why are we here? Why are we trying to help people? And so, Simon's, I think his position is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so we really need to, you know, as a profession, I think as individual business people, we really need to get clear about why we do what we do. We need to answer our own why, and so his point is that we need to start with why. If you haven't read the book, I would encourage you to do it. It's one of the best business books I've read in the last quite a few years, and certainly the TED Talk I think will be inspirational to you. So let me start, Bill, with, you know, why I'm here. My belief is that we have a decay epidemic. It's a pandemic globally. Dental caries is the #1 disease in the world. It affects every age group. It's the #1 disease in every age group, literally in every country in the world. And what we were taught and trained to do in dental school doesn't work anymore. And this epidemic is getting worse rather than better. And this isn't okay with me. You know, it's like I'm not okay with dental caries being the #1 disease and getting worse. And I really believe that it's our problem to solve. The dental profession, people look to us as the experts. They're expecting us to come up with a solution and help them. And so really this is on our shoulders to figure out. And so that's why I'm here. And why did I invite Bill here tonight to speak? You're probably wondering. But, you know, I believe that the decay pandemic and the practice profitability pandemic are analogous. I think what I do with patients and what Bill does with clients are not that dissimilar. I believe that to figure out why your patient's teeth look the way they do and why your practice looks the way it does, those two questions are related. And so the risk assessment model, whether it's on your patient trying to figure out why they have dental caries and then try to figure out how to resolve that for them, or whether you're trying to look at your practice and ask the question, why does my practice look the way? Why has my income maybe gone down? Why don't I have the free time that I want? I mean, there are a lot of those questions to ask, and at the end of the day, coaching, whether it's wellness coaching to help your patient identify their why am I here, why am I trying to change my or improve my health, and why you as a practitioner want to change what's going on in your practice, again, you have to start with why. Bill, comments on that?
Well, first off, I'll say you say that the filling materials that we use aren't working anymore. I'm not sure they ever worked. You know, all we were doing is treating the holes in teeth, and I think the same thing here with the practice. You know, what I've been doing with doctors for a long time, and it's taking me some time. I didn't know why I was doing this to start with. I knew that I had developed a pretty good model to practice with, and I tried to teach doctors to do what I was doing, and not having the kind of success that I have today. And one of the things, and until I read this book and you exposed me to this, I didn't really understand it. But what I've done now is I help the doctor figure out why they want to change. And one of the things that I say is in this area, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it right now, but if you want to stop me if you want me to. But really, people start out with a dream. And it's like you and I were talking before the call, Kim. We talked about how all companies, and this came right out of the book, if you can use the upper right-hand quadrant of a graph and draw two parallel lines starting at 0, and the top line is the what we do, and in your case it's the dental practice, it's, you know, we do dentistry, and then the line below that is the dream. And what happens is we go along and we lose the dream. The dream is why. The why is to take care of my family, to enjoy life, and the practice is really only something that supports that. But as those two lines start to diverge and that dream is lost, even though we're fairly successful, it becomes work. And I've been able to live my life, and I've never had to work for a living. Part of the reason is, of course, is that if you're doing what you love, you never have to work another day in your life. And that's part of the why, you see, is helping doctors realize the best they can possibly be. And I'm not just talking your practice. Again, the practice simply supports your life, but I'm talking about doctors that have enough income to do what they want, get out of debt early, and have time off. To me, dentistry has always been, and Kim knows this, I grew up on a dairy farm, and you know, a dairy farm is 365 days a year, and I knew there was a better way to make a living than that. And that's one of the reasons I chose dentistry. And I've always taken August off, for example, and I just got back recently from 6 weeks at our home in Mexico, trying to learn to kiteboard. I'm not sure it's a good thing for me to be doing, but it's starting to be fun. I'm starting to get to that point where it's fun. But the point is, we don't have to work so many days, and so many of our clients. One that I won't mention a name, but it's one that Kim knows very well. 4 or 5 years ago, when he started with me, was working about 190 days a year. And over the last, I think, 4 years, we have cut that down to 109 last year, while he tripled his net income and will be completely out of debt in his early 40s. That's why I do this. I mean, just to see the freedom that it gives people, it's just an incredible feeling. And so people can and use dentistry as the vehicle to create a life like that. I think he went to Europe. I think the same client went to Europe, what, 3 times last year, Kim?
I think so. Yeah. And has 3 times scheduled for this year, as I recall.
Yeah.
You know, Bill, and so you bring up a really good point. I think, you know, when we all got out of dental school, you know, the why was, you know, I went into dentistry both to be, I think, to be able to work for myself, create financial freedom, and do all of those things, create the life that I wanted. At the same time, I really wanted to help people. Like, I wanted to spend my life doing something that was really helpful to other people, and dentistry seemed like a really good fit for me to be able to do that. And I think what happens is we get out of school, we have that dream, and then it's after a period of time that we kind of get mired down in the what and the how, right? It's you get mired down in running a business that, you know, we're not really trained to do in dental school. And, you know, we struggle with, you know, how do I do this? How do I do that? We're always learning new techniques. When we go take CE courses, they're always about the what and the how.
Exactly.
And so somewhere along the way, we get focused on that what and how, and we kind of forget about why we started doing this in the first place. And I think that I think it's really important, whether in any business, and so, you know, in all of my businesses, I think it's really important that people are really clear about why we do what we do and why do we come here, because that's really why patients come see us. You know, what Simon said was they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that one of the examples I love is Lyndon Johnson going and visiting the NASA Space Center, you know, in 1969. We're trying to put a man on the moon, and he stops in the facility, and there's a guy there who's obviously a janitor. And he asks him, he says, "Sir, what's your job here?" And he looks at the president, and he says, "Mr. President, I'm putting a man on the moon." And, you know, he understood that he was a part of a team, and he wasn't a janitor. He understood why he went to work every day. And whatever part that he contributed, it was still, they all had the common why, and that's why they were there. And I think about having your practice be at a point where you are clear about why you come to work every day. And what if everybody on your team understood that, to the point that it didn't matter what their position was on your team, they were clear about why we are here every day, and how joyful and wonderful, I have to tell you, that is, to be able to work surrounded with teammates that are also real clear, and they embrace or share your why, and that attracts the patients that also, or the clients that also share your why as well. So I think that, you know, that whole concept of, you know, just being able to design your life, you know, that really comes through coaching, right?
Well, yeah, I think the thing is here is what I get to do, and this is really the fun part for me. And as you know, I'll be 70 on my next birthday, and I'm never going to quit. I love what I do so much that it allows me, and of course I'm living the dream that I always wanted, and my wife and I have discussed this so many times over the 46 years we've been married. But the thing is that most people lose that dream. And it's not so much what I teach people, I think, how to practice or what to do, and I do a lot of that as well, but I help them rediscover that dream. You know, I was today talking to a doctor we took on a year ago. We actually started with this last March, so, you know, about 10 months or so we've been working with him, and it's a big practice. He came to me doing $2.1 million with an associate. And I said, well, and a pretty good net, certainly enough net that would put him into the millionaires and the billionaires club, according to our politicians. And yet, he was working. He was working at this. He wasn't having a good time anymore. And you know, we sat down, and what he did. Now I'll tell you the numbers first, then I'll tell you something he told me today. First thing he told me today was, well, first off, he took 8 weeks off last year, first time ever. First time ever. Sometimes he says, I used to take long weekends sometimes, but this year he took 8 solid weeks off. Not all 8 at once, 8 spread out through the year. He reduced the number of people working in his office by about half, and his production went, and this is almost unbelievable, but it went from 2.1 to just shy of 2.7. Now, you do the math on that, and he doesn't have his final figures for me today for net for the year, but we reduced his expenses dramatically on staff, you know, from the high mid-30% down to 20%. So you just add 14% of the $2 million, and that went to the bottom line. And then you added another $600,000 on top of that. But he said, what I did is I changed his whole way of thinking. He said, and I said, how was that? And he said, you recreated a dream for me.
Right.
You got my wife and I back in touch with the dream that we had. And that's the important part. So you see, the dream, Kim, is the why.
Right.
And I don't know what the why is. I've got to find it out. I've got to find out what that is in a client, find out what that dream is, find out why they originally chose dentistry. Why did they do this? Why did they go into business for themselves? What was their reason? One of the things that my own daughter, who went back to dental school, I mean, at 31, after two separate careers, 2 separate degrees, decided to go to dental school, and she had no science, and I will say not a lot of science aptitude at that point, and she had to go back and take, you know, by organic chemistry and physics and a bunch of math and all that sort of thing, and she would call me sometimes, and it continued through dental school as well, and she would call me, and I always told both my daughters that, you know, the more exclusive the club, the harder it is to join. And she kept calling me during dental school about once a week and said, Dad, tell me again how good this club is. But the thing was, she didn't like all these science courses. She really didn't like the science courses. But the dream of being her own boss, that was her dream. And then the dream of helping other people. I mean, she really wanted that. But when I asked her, the biggest thing I said, why are you going to dental school? Because if you're doing it to please me, it's too much work. She said lifestyle. In other words, that was her dream, you see, was to have the time with her children, time with her husband, time to enjoy things in life, and have enough income that you could afford to do those things. I mean, you can have the money and no time, and you can have the time and no money. And the beautiful part about dentistry, if you do it right, you can have both.
Right.
And that's the dream. That's what you've got to get people back in touch with. And same with patients. You've got to find out the why for them. If you're trying to sell the what and the how, as I've often said, you're probably the only one in the room that understands what you're talking about.
You know, it's Bill, it's so interesting that when you get patients clear on, you know, why are you here, why do you want to change, you know, what's your motivation here, unless they're really clear about what their motivation is to change or why I want to improve my health or why I want to do this, human behavioral studies are really clear. Unless they're emotionally connected and understand what their why is, they're probably not going to be successful at it. So that's really, you know, digging down, you know, for me as a coach, as a wellness coach, is really kind of helping. I need to find out the why their teeth look the way they do, and then I need to help the patient figure out why they want to do something about it. And if I can answer both of those two questions, you know, it's a life-changing experience for those people, and it's the most, it's just the most rewarding thing that I've done in my career to date. One of the things on this slide, you know, it's like why coaching and patient health, you know, kind of intersect. You know, one of the things that Bob Barkley was tried to teach us in the 1970s before he died was that patients don't really start buying dentistry until they stop getting cavities. and it's kind of counterintuitive. Like if one of the things I think that happened to us all, Bill, in the 90s, we were all into the cosmetic dentistry. Money was flush. I mean, I can remember people coming into my practice with grocery bags full of cash and wanting veneers, right? And, you know, that it's real easy to be successful and financially successful and have fun and not have any worries when you're in that kind of an environment. But, boy, we're a long ways from that environment. And
well, you know, you talk about that, and a lot of us got our shoulders out of joint, patting ourselves in the back how great we were. And either doing dentistry or coaching doctors to do well. And then one day I picked up the Wall Street Journal and I was reading an article about in the year 2000, and I had a lot of clients in Seattle at this time. In the year 2000, then these guys were all doing cosmetics and, you know, dropping insurance companies and all this sort of thing. And I thought, boy, aren't I doing a great job coaching? And I picked up this Wall Street Journal article, and in 2000, Microsoft had 17,500 employees in Seattle, and the average compensation was $970,000. So in other words, you got 17,500 people earning $1 million a year in a given city. It's not too hard to be successful in any business in that town at that time. So you talk about grocery bags full of cash. That's exactly how it was.
You know, and so those days, so it was easy to, I think, be successful, you know, in that environment. It's not like that anymore. I mean, I think that a lot of practices, certainly the economy, the unemployment rate, people are a lot more mindful, I think, how they spend their discretionary income today. We've got more competition, you know, or I guess we're feeling the competition more today in terms of where they're spending their money. And so it's like the one thing that sticks out in my mind that I've experienced in the last 12, 13 years that I've been doing this Cary's risk assessment, you know, practicing with this model, is that, and I didn't expect it, but I'm actually busier, and my income was up last year. My practice is busier, Bill, because I have patients that are wanting to do a lot more elective care because they're healthy, and they know that the money that they're going to spend on their mouth is going to last. It's not going to be a waste, where before, you know, and my frustration was that I would do all this dentistry and it wouldn't last, and I didn't know why. I was doing everything I was trained to do, and so I was frustrated. They were frustrated, and at some point they stopped doing it. But if you really want to get your practice busier, the answer is to get your patients decay-free or healthy in the first place, because that's, while it seems kind of counterintuitive, if your patients stopped having cavities, you would go out of business. No, the reality is if your patients stop getting cavities, you're going to be busier than you've ever been in your career, even in this economic climate. So I think that it's really important for us to go back and I think reevaluate those lessons from Bob Barkley, you know, getting patients healthy and Bill also, I mean, I look at what you're doing with your clients, and I know a great number of your clients. I know them personally and very closely, and I look at what you're doing with them, and they're being quite successful in this economic environment strictly because they're real clear about their why.
That's correct. And see, I don't know their why, and you don't know your patient's why. That's what we've got to find out, and we've taught this in case presentation for years, is we use slightly different terminology for it, but we've always said that people make decisions not on facts, not rational decisions. They make decisions based on emotions. And that's exactly the why. You see, that's the dream again. It's the dream of, and you say the dream of being healthy, but then you've got to go beyond and find, well, why do they want to be healthy? How is that going to improve their life? How is that going to improve their position in life? And that's really, and sometimes that's just imagined. Sometimes it really does help them. And sometimes it is a dream. I mean, there are a lot of things that we've all done that we've got this wonderful dream, and we go out and buy something, and sometimes the dream is even better than the real thing. I use travel as an example. Sometimes the anticipation of a trip is every bit as much fun as the trip itself. So it's the same thing in a lot of things. We think that buying a certain thing will dramatically change our life, and you've got to find out what is that dream. And so it's asking questions as opposed to talking about the what and the how.
Yeah. So one of the things that I pulled up on this next slide I thought was very interesting. If we stop and look at our scientific progress continuum, we start with intuitive-based medicine, and that's our dentistry, and that's where I think, you know, I've got a good hunch that this is what's happening with you, and I know that if I give you this remedy, I'm thinking that might help you. And so everything was kind of, it was like an educated guess, but it was kind of this, but it was just intuitive. And then we kind of grow to the point where we have empirical-based medicine where we can, probabilistically, I can tell you, if you have these two symptoms, there's an 80% chance that this is what your problem is. And if I give you this remedy, there's a 77% chance that you'll have this kind of result. And I can start looking at probabilistics or percentages and calculations on what went wrong and how I might help you. And actually where we're headed is into precision medicine, where I can quantify and measure exactly what's causing your problem. I can identify that. I can quantify it. I can measure it. I can test it. I can provide you with a targeted therapy that's going to eliminate that particular issue, and then I can measure the outcome and the results. And so we're really headed toward precision medicine and dentistry, and that's really where Canberra fits in to this whole thing, this Cari's risk assessment management model, is me being able to identify exactly why your teeth look like that. And if I can do that and target it and measure it, then I can go back in and provide this targeted therapy that's going to help eliminate or resolve that. And, I think it's very interesting because it really comes back to why. Why do you, me being able to look at the patient and say, why do your teeth look like that? And I was thinking, and I threw this in because it was kind of interesting. I was sitting reflecting the other, last week as we were talking about this, Bill, and I really look at the dental practice continuum model, as we look at how has dental practice changed and how has that continuum changed over time. And we really started with a fee-for-service. Dentists were fee-for-service. They were solo practitioners. Then in the 60s, we saw the introduction of dental insurance, and we had a third-party payer. People moved together into group practices to try and be more, I think, economically feasible. Then, in the 80s, we saw this growth of capitation and HMO practices and actually even retail practices. I think that we're probably moving toward a single-payer model somewhere in our mix, whether it's a Medicaid clinic or government-based model. And certainly with Obamacare, there's.
You mean the Affordable Health Care Act?
Yeah, the Affordable Health. Yeah, the Affordable Health Care Act, which is going to be the highest-priced medicine ever. There's actually requirements in there to adding these children to the system, to the dental system, and trying to provide care for them. And really, I'm looking back to what I'm seeing for the people that are really successful in this continuum. Their target are going back to fee-for-service solo practice. Now, they may accept some insurance and what have you, but they're really back into that original model that we had like 40 years ago. And Bill, you probably remember Abram King from the 1980s.
Absolutely.
And, I studied with Abram.
One of my early mentors.
Yeah, I studied with Abram for a few years, and I remember him telling us that dentistry was going to, there were going to be 3 tiers of dentistry, that fee-for-service at the top tier, then you were going to have these, the third-party system, the capitation primarily in HMO, and then you were going to have this government-based, welfare-type clinics. And, that was 30 years ago.
And here we are.
And here we are, and it's actually coming. Abram unfortunately didn't live to see it, but what he tried to tell us and prepare us for didn't happen as quickly as maybe Abram thought it was going to. But it is upon us here, and I really see this more as a loop that we're back to. I think the best model, economic model. Certainly, group practices can work, but the fee-for-service solo practitioner model is kind of back to probably the way that we can be most successful in dentistry.
Well, this is. I agree completely with what you've said. And Abram was one of my early. I met him through Omar Reed. All these were early mentors of mine, and he predicted this. And I talk with my clients on a regular basis, like once a month. I have a coaching call with them, and I talked to one of my clients today from Nashville, Tennessee, who, as of January 1st, changed his relationship with the last insurance company, and that was Delta Dental, and he is no longer a provider. And yet most of the dentists in his area are providers, taking 25, 30% discount on every fee, every service they provide for those Delta patients. And he sat down with me. Now, he's been a client for about 3 years, but a year ago, we had increased the practice, I would say dramatically. It increased his net. We basically doubled his net over about a year's time, got him up into the category that the politicians call the millionaires and the billionaires, 450 plus net.
Yeah, the top 1%.
Actually, about a little over 500,000, and cut his time down. And a year ago, we said, okay, what are the goals? What is the dream for the next year? And his dream was to change that relationship and be a non-provider for Delta Dental. And so we sat and we talked about that. Why would he like to do that? And the why, he said, I'm making plenty of money. It's not really not the money. It's the feeling I get when I have to discount my fee so a patient will say yes. He said, I've been doing this for long enough. I don't need to discount my fee to anybody. He says it's just a personal satisfaction not to have to discount his fees. And I said, well, in order to do that and not have your income drop, and we figured out that he had about 20% of his patients were Delta Dental. And we had to do some math, and we figured out what he had to do to make that happen. So this year we increased the practice enough with the non-Delta participating patients that at the end of this year, if we hit those certain targets, that we could drop the Delta, and we always say change the relationship with the insurance company rather than dropping the insurance company.
Right.
And we were able to do that, and we know that this year his income won't change at all. It'll stay the same. Now, it may drop a little bit from this year, but see, those numbers I quoted were a year ago. So we had to grow it this year so we could lose a little bit of a few of the Delta patients and still end up with the same model. So here we are. Fee for service. He's 100% fee for service now, solo practice, and he's doing extremely well. And his plan is practicing at least another 10 years. And so he just said, I'm not going to do this any longer. And so we had to. So that's all very good. And this is exactly what we're seeing. And so many doctors are not doing this, Kim. They're going these other routes. They are leaning heavily on the third parties. They're taking on the HMO plans and some doctors. I mean, it's amazing to me that these retail chains, and I'm not critical of the retail chains. I think it's a good business model for the people that own them. It amazes me that so many dentists will go to work for someone else in those kind of circumstances. Now, they have lost the dream. I mean, they are not. First off, they're told when they can take a vacation. They're told what kind of dentistry they have to do. They're told their working hours, and I happen to know Kim well enough to know that he's just like me. He's unemployable, and we're just like. And I think most dentists. That's what my daughter said when she, after working out there in private industry for a few years in an architectural firm and at Nordstrom. She said after about 6 or 7 years of that, she said, Dad, I'm just like you. I'm unemployable. Now, that's the dream. I mean, that is the dream that so many dentists lose. And you think about when they go into these retail practices, there's no dream. There's no dream left. It's the why is gone. And so they.
And I think, I think, Bill, two things strike me. Your client in Tennessee, number one, what I really hear in there in terms of one of his whys is autonomy. I think when we can, as practitioners kind of shed that, the insurance company dictating to us or dictating fees, dictating treatment, I think one of my whys, certainly one of my strong whys for going into dentistry was autonomy.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's something I share with you and I share with a lot of dentists, I think, that are even on the line tonight with us. One of our early dreams, one of the whys that we went into dentistry was for that autonomy. And, we kind of lose or give up that autonomy and you kind of lose sight of your why. However, I think it's real clear that you can have that autonomy if you're really clear about your why.
I agree.
If you're really clear about why you're doing what you're doing, I think patients who appreciate or connect with that value your services and will come to see you.
We've proven it.
In my own practice. Yeah, I mean, you've
proven it. But you have to pull that why from the patient of why they would accept. Why would they come to your practice? Why would they pay your fee? Why would they be willing to say, yes, I know my insurance company won't pay as much if you're a provider, but I'm going to come to you anyway. And the reason they come to you anyway is because you've developed the ability to pull that dream from the patient. Right. What is their dream for their dental health?
Yep.
And if you can do that, I'm telling you, they'll beat a path to your door.
Absolutely, Bill. You are right on there. So, what we've been talking about here tonight is, we're taught really good at what and how. Evidence-based dentistry is, the what. You know, that's that empirical medicine model. It's probabilistic. I can tell you, if you put a sealant on this tooth, we fluoridate the water, it's going to reduce the caries incidence 27% across our population. I mean, we have all of those what kind of answers. And so we go through and find out what's wrong, for the patient, and we focus on that, like what's wrong with the patient. And we go through this co-diagnosis, which is, definitely a step ahead of telling the patient what's wrong, helping them discover what's wrong. But when you distill this down and you look at the what, it's pretty easy, because think about it. They either have a periodontal problem, they have a caries/erosion problem, they have an occlusal problem, or they have an aesthetic issue. That's it. There's like 4 whats. Now, they may have a combination of those, but the reality is, we got 4 whats here we got to deal with. And then we follow up. We are so good at this. We follow up with the how.
How we're going to fix it.
How are we going to fix this? And then we get into this informed consent, where we provide all these treatment options. And if you really look, I was writing these out the other day for a presentation. If you really look at hows we can help people, you've got extractions, root canals, fillings, crowns, veneers, bridges, partial dentures, full dentures, and implants. That's it. There's 10. There's 10 hows. So we got 4 whats and 10 hows, and we are absolutely, completely focused on that, and we totally skip the why.
As a matter of fact, what most dentists do is we spend all our time on not only the 10 hows, we explain how we're going to do the hows. And we stay in that neocortex part of the brain, that logical, rational thinking part, thinking the patient understands what we're saying. And I say, when you're in the what and the how, I think I said it already, I've said it many times, you're the only person in the room that knows what you're talking about.
Bill, it's interesting. I did an hour-long consult on a major restorative case today. It's going to be a guy's entire mouth, and I went through the what and the how with him. I went through that, the risk assessment, and then went through the risk assessment to figure out, why does your mouth look this way? Because we need to address why, understand why, so as we design our how, that we can try and reduce the risk for you going forward, so that we have a more predictable outcome. And in an hour's time, this patient, a great guy, kept coming back to why.
Mm-hmm.
His interest and his explanation, when he kept talking to me, it was all about why I'm doing this, why I want to do this, why I'm ready to do this, why. I mean, the what and the how, I don't really think he cared about.
No.
To be honest with you, I
was going to say, I could have cut that down to about 10 minutes for you, Ken.
It's like, I went through my co-diagnosis, and I did the informed consent. I did all the things that I feel that I need to do for the patient and legally required to do to make sure that they're making a good healthcare decision, or an informed healthcare decision for themselves going forward. But he didn't have any questions about the what. He had no questions about the how. His only question that he really wanted to talk, and he wanted to talk about and explore it, is why I want to do this. And he wanted to be really clear. And we spent about 30 minutes talking about, why are you doing this?
Yes.
And at the end of the 30 minutes, he was real clear about why he wanted to do this and why he wants to do it now. And it was a very interesting experience for me, particularly from the fact that I put this slide together last week, and you and I looked at these, and now we're talking about it. Here I'm sitting with this real person today who's making a major financial decision, and the whole decision came down to why.
Yes.
And it was a really interesting thing to watch, and I didn't tell him why. I mean, I can't answer that for him.
No, he's the only one who can do that.
I can ask him the powerful, open-ended questions, to help him explore why he's wanting to do this. But he got, by the end of that 30 minutes or so, he was really clear about why he wanted to do this. And at that point in time, he'd made the decision to do it. And so the next thing was, there are no clinical questions. It's like, now what I need to know is, how do we schedule it? When do we start? And when do we start? And how do we get it scheduled so I can get this done? And, it's interesting, but we literally, I think most of us in dentistry, and we're trained to be that way. We're trained to focus on the what, and we're trained to focus on the how, and we just absolutely, totally skip the why. And I asked the question, why do we do that?
And my question also is, how's that working for us?
Yes, that worked really well, you know. And when you get really clear on that why, and he was real clear about why he wanted me to do it, which was very interesting. You know, as we went through that, he was very clear about he'd been to 3 other dentists in the past 10 years or whatever, and he was really clear about, Kim, this is why, and let me tell you about why I want you to be the person to do this for me. So it was a very interesting consult. And you know, Bill, and so I really, as dentists, we focus on the what and the how. And you know, the best I can come up with as business people in general, as dentists, we suck.
Well, I'm a little more complimentary than that. You know, I'm very often on airplanes, you know, speaking at meetings around the country, and I'll be sitting there with my computer working on a program, and somebody will say, "Oh, you're a dentist," and I'll tell them what I do, and they say, "Oh, dentists are terrible businessmen, or they suck," you know. And so I say, "Wait a minute." So regardless of what business they're in, I'll say, "So what is your overhead in your business? What's your industry average for overhead?" I remember having this conversation with a person that had a chain of grocery stores, and he said, "Well, if we can clear 1 to 2%, we're doing great." And I said, "Well, you know, most dentists actually, they selected a business with about even a mediocre practice has at least a 25% margin." And I said, I can help somebody get a 40, 45% margin. So they are better businessmen. We chose a real good business model. But in general, you're right. In general, you're right, and that's what I've done for 25 years. And I'd like to share with you an opportunity that we've created recently, and it's really only for that top 1% of dentists. And it's not just based on income. It's based on not income, but lifestyle, time they want off, you know, how willing they are to change, how willing they are to make decisions. And one thing I've found, Kim, is that dentists that understand the why can make decisions.
Yep.
If they're not clear on the why, they have a hard time making decisions of whether it's moving forward. And so we put together a thing, we call it our personal and excellence profile, and it's really like a risk assessment for a patient. And what we do, if they will go to our website, and right beside a picture of me on the home page is a big gold button, and if they will click on that, the opportunity is they fill out a form. They fill out, and it's several pages, and they fill it out with their spouse, or if they have a partner in their practice. In other words, I won't do it unless they both fill it out together. And it's just because I'm not going to spend time on this with someone that's not clear, and you can't be clear. I mean, if you're married, you have to have your spouse involved. This is not about your practice. This is to rekindle that dream. And, of course, there's some numbers about the practice because that's what's going to support part of this. But it's about that dream again. Where do you see that practice 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And then once you've filled it out, I will spend an hour with you. I mean, I'll study it first. I'll study it real carefully, and I'll spend an hour with you. At the end of that hour, we will have recreated that dream. I won't create the dream. You create the dream. And then I'll show you where you can dramatically improve the profitability. Because I find one of the things, Kim, is that so many dentists are, well, the doctor I told you about earlier today that I talked to that increased his practice from 2.1 to 2.7, he said, you know, for the first time, he hasn't had his accountant calling and saying, "Doctor, don't cash your check this payday. We've just paid the payroll for the rest of the staff. There's not enough there for you to cash your check. So if you could hold your check." And he said, now when you're in that situation, there is no dream.
Right.
When you're in that situation, you're on survival. And so we help them recreate that dream, and that's the really thing. So if you will go to that, and in this PEP we call it the Personal Excellence Profile, it is $1,000. And again, and the reason for that is I don't want to spend my time unless somebody is serious, and I mean really serious. If you're serious about changing your life and your practice, well, let's talk. You put $1,000 in your credit card, and at the end of the time that we spend on the phone, you can make a decision about whether you want to join my coaching program, and if so, I'll apply the $1,000 to the program. If you're not satisfied, if you think this was a waste of time and it wasn't worth it, I'll immediately, while you're still on the phone, I will credit your credit card for the $1,000 that you put on it. So it's really risk-free. But I'm not interested in just kicking tires I want some people that really want to cut down the amount of time they work and dramatically improve their income and change the way they practice dentistry. But I want more than that. I want them to learn to see life differently. Kim and I have laughed about this off and on. Kim sees life pretty much the same way. He and his wife, Dana, and my wife, Carolyn, and I kind of see life the same way. And, you know, we see life as a banquet. And I'm going to lick my platter clean. I'm not an expert at anything practically, but I'm kind of a jack of all trades. But that's what I say, a banquet, not a gourmet meal. But I want to experience a lot, and I want to do a lot. I want to go a lot of places. You know, I've got a list of places to go, and my wife and I take a vacation pretty much every month. Someplace, it's easy today. You get on a plane and go, but and that's part of the dream. And part of that dream is, for us, is showing our grandchildren. We've already shown our two daughters that dream, and they're doing well at that. But I want to show our grandkids that life is wonderful. There are so many kids growing up today that don't get that from their parents. They don't get that from their peers. They get that life is tough, and I don't buy that. Life is wonderful if you can seize it. And I want to work with those doctors that see life as a wonderful experience, and I feel that we're on this planet for a very short period of time. And because of that, you know, in keeping that dream alive, I want to make sure that I'm helping those doctors that actually want to make a change, and that's part of what this PEP does. It's kind of our risk assessment, Kim. It's kind of is this a case?
I really see your PEP as the risk assessment, and then the coaching comes after that.
Exactly.
But really getting the doctors clear on the why, and I heard a real clear why coming from you there, Bill. I mean, why are you doing this? It's like you really believe that dentists should see life as a banquet, as a wonderful world of opportunity for us to experience and enjoy and get the most out of. And so your why is really you believe that everybody should have the opportunity, and that's why you're there to help them.
Yeah, you see, it's life is a wonderful opportunity, and I think as dentists, you know, if a dentist really gets it, you know, you're really changing lives. And it's just like that janitor in the Space Center. If you see your role as filling holes in teeth, taking care of gum disease, life is long, and it's not much fun.
Yeah. You know,
but if you see that you're changing the world a smile at a time, it's just exciting to go to work. And I want to work with those doctors that, you know, I joke in my seminars, I know your son and your stepson have mentioned this, I'm sure, that I'd like to start a chain of restaurants called TGIM, you know, thank God it's Monday, as opposed to so many people out there in the workforce laughing about, thank God it's Friday, now I can go do something I really like. And that's just a real poor way to go through life. So if you're interested, and you're serious, not just interested, but serious, go to our website. It's Blatchford.com and /now. And click on that gold button, fill out that PEP, and then you send it to me directly. It's right on the form. You just send it to me, Dr. Bill at Blatchford.com, and we'll get you started on the PEP or the risk assessment. And if you're one of those doctors that I'll work with, I can guarantee we'll change your life.
You know, Bill, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. I can't think of a better business coach for people to spend time with. You know, you're real clear on your why. I tell you, I've gotten really clear on my why in the last 6 months in terms of the education that I do with other practitioners, you know, in terms of dental caries. You know, I'm really at a point in my career where if I'm not okay with dental caries with this epidemic, but if you're okay with that, like if that's okay with you, it'd be a really good time for you to get up and walk next door to the other room where they're talking about the new bonding agent, because you and I really don't share a common why, and I'm really not interested in having you in my lecture.
Very well said.
You get really clear about who you are and what you're here to do and how you're here to help people, and it's like, So as we look at coaching, I've been through this coaching program the last year. I'm still in it. It's been one of the most amazing experiences that I've done in my career, but really learning how to coach patients. Bill, you've been a coach for a long time. Coaching is coaching. I mean, whether you're coaching a patient, asking them why they want to change their smile, why are you here, why do you want to do this, why do you want to do it now, or whether you as a practice coach are asking the practitioner and his spouse, or her and her spouse, why does your life look the way it does? What is your dream? How would you like it to be? How do you want to change that? Why do you want to do that? Getting real clear about that why. It's the same process. And so it's like, and that's the thing that really struck me as I was going through this whole Start With Why in the last year and redesigning my lecture series for this year on dental caries is really, Bill, what you and I do is pretty much the same thing when it comes to that.
That's correct. Pretty much the same. You're coaching the dentist to help their patients with health. I'm coaching the dentist with the dream about their life, and that's the most important thing, is why do you want to change? And that's the question that we teach our clients to ask patients. We've been doing that for years, is finding out what they want, why they want it, how badly they want it, what they've tried so far, how's that worked, and what would they like to do next. And once you find that out, and I go on a theory that if with a patient, and this has worked beautifully for me and it's worked for our clients, is if we determine that patient wants to do business with us, we'll work out the details. And this is the why is, why do I want to do business with you? Then we'll work out the details. And if they're not going to do business with us, then the details don't matter. The details are the what and the how.
Yep. And one thing I learned from you, Bill, a long time ago, and it's so true, patients, what do they want? And they want to look good, they want to feel good, and they want it to last a long time.
Exactly.
Bill, you told me that years ago, and I have told so many patients that, or I threw it out as a question when I said, what is it? How can I really help you? Why are you here? And when they can't really come up with something, I ask them, is it that you want to look good, feel good, and have it last a long time? And I've had so many patients say, yes. That's exactly what I want. Finally, somebody understands what I'm looking for. And I always have to laugh.
And so then you go the next level down and find out why they want to look good, how it's going to improve their life, but get them to tell you why they want it to feel good, why they want to be healthy, why is that important to them, and then listen to what they're saying. And I've changed that a little bit from last a long time to value, because I think in today's society, people have become, I will say, price conscious, but value.
They're value conscious, Bill.
They're value conscious. They're not as, and so many dentists interpret that as price conscious. And I was telling this to a group of, I had 300 people in a room at the ADA. I had 3 rooms that size, and I had an example. I said, about 15 years ago, I bought a garment bag, and I paid somewhere between $600 and $700 for this suitcase 15 years ago. And my question was, I want you to put your hand up if you think that's expensive. And 90% of the people in the room put their hand up, and the others were asleep. And I said, now, wait a minute, let me tell you about this bag. It came with a lifetime unconditional guarantee. And I put about 100,000 miles a year on the airlines alone on that bag, times 15. That bag's been around the world a few times. And about every 2 years, Kim, they've sent me a new bag, no questions asked. Was that an expensive bag? But it was value.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what patients want. So it's not, and that's how you help these doctors. We help doctors get out of selling based on price, based on what the insurance company will pay. They're looking for value.
One of the things that's really important, I think, for the patients. And this is something I think that we as practitioners I don't understand very well, but I can tell you that it's more important for my patient when they tell me why, when they find the why answer for themselves. I don't need to hear the why. Their brain needs to hear them articulate the why. They need to hear themselves say why. It's kind of an interesting process to think about, but their brain actually needs to hear them articulate why, because then they can own it and understand it. It's really important to understand the why. I don't need to hear it. Their brain needs to hear it, and they need to hear it from their mouth. and that kind of anchors it for the patient so that they really are clear about why I'm doing this. And
Why
I think
it's
that's
important
probably,
to them.
yeah, I think that's probably the same with practitioners as well. As I'm listening to you tonight, as you're talking about, helping couples figure out their dream and kind of answer their why and get clear about that and move forward. Bill, my vision for dentistry is that a patient could come into a dental practice, and rather than have the practitioners the practice focus on the what and the how, start asking why, and start focusing on why to help patients. Why do their teeth look the way they do, and why do they want to change? Because if we can answer those two whys, we can literally change people's lives as practitioners. I think I probably share that vision with you in terms of how you help practices.
Well, I think take it one step further. If we can get patients to answer those, if we can find out those questions right there, the why, we actually change the world. Because if you could solve the disease called dental caries, you think of the change that you would make in this world. It's not just changing. We're going to change it one patient at a time, but it's going to be a huge, huge change as you get that accomplished. And there's probably nobody out there that I know of, and I've been in dentistry 40 years, that's actually has been asking those questions. And when I tell people this all the time, that Kim Kutsch is one of the most curious people that I know. And Kim, you have always asked the why. I mean, you think about how many, Kim has, I don't know how many patents that he holds in dental products, and the reason is he's never been satisfied with how things are. Why is it that way? How can we improve it? And he's just always asking. So I'm a little bit surprised that you'd never really thought about this why question until you saw
I guess until I actually saw him and connected, and I had to see it a couple of times before it really, got landed for me, and then read the book, and it was just like, oh, yeah, it was like, this is exactly, it fit so well for me that I just wanted to share it with everybody else, because I think he really articulated what I've been trying to do and doing, and not having maybe clear terminology for all these years, so it's been really helpful. That kind of brings us to the end of the program tonight. I hope there are a few questions, because it'd be really fun to answer a few with Bill. If you're not okay with tooth decay, being the #1 disease in the world, we'd love to have you join us in that mission. I've written a book in the last year with Bob Bowers, and we'd love to send you a copy of the book. And if you have other questions, or you want to get started with CariFree, or if Bill has given you his email address, if you need contacts, contact us. We'll definitely get you connected with Bill. And I would say, Kendall, at this point in time, hopefully, have we got any questions here?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Blatchford and Dr. Kutsch. And also thanks to everyone for your questions. We do have quite a few coming in, so we'll get started. We'll answer a few, and then we'll be replying to the remainder of those questions throughout the week as well. So the first question is, what is the best way to introduce this program into your practice? Patients are used to you doing your traditional work, and now you're doing something radical to their perception.
Kim, can I take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It's about this whole call has been about. Find out why your patient is there. Ask questions. Let the patients develop the value for it. This is the thing that we have taught in every area. It doesn't matter what the product is. It doesn't matter what the service we do in dentistry. Simply find out why your patient is there.
Yeah, and the only way that we get that is to ask them.
Ask the questions.
Yeah. And I think to answer the kind of the rubber, hitting the pavement part of this, or the nuts and bolts part of it, how do you introduce a system, a Canberra type system like CariFree into your practice? How's the best way to do that? You can start with the entire thing, which is what I did, and you could implement little parts of it at a time and slowly integrate it. There's a lot of ways that you could do that. The one thing that I would tell you is to be really clear about why you want to do that, because if you're clear about why you want to do this, and you see this as a vision to be able to better help people and help people with their health, and that's important to you, as long as you're clear about the why, if your team is clear about the why, it won't matter. Like Bill just said, as long as you can articulate why you're there and why you're doing this to the patient, if that connects with their why, they're going to be your strongest advocates. And if you ask them why they're there, and they can give you those questions. I have a lot of most of my new patients that I get now have been referred to me because of this. They're already there because they know this is what we do. So I would tell you that there's a lot of different ways to introduce it. The first thing I would do is start with a free webinar with one of the specialists here at CariFree to share with you what the entire system looks like, and then you can kind of figure out on your own how that fits for you and how you want to implement it. But there's about 3 or 4 different routes that we could recommend or kind of direct you to. But it's really, again, this is the topic of Bill, it's the topic tonight. It's start with why.
Yeah, Simon makes a quote that I'll mention is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if that is your vision, if your vision is helping people solve this disease, I can tell you you don't have to really talk about the product to have people accept it. You talk about your passion, you show your passion for what you're trying to accomplish, the why. And that's why people buy from you.
Yep.
That's what made Apple computers successful.
You know, and I hear this every day, that's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, you know, they get the why. So that's, hopefully we answered that question. Kendall, do you have a couple more?
Yes, we will answer one more, and we actually had quite a few questions coming in that were all kind of similar. So this one is, how do I encourage my team to adopt this mentality that seems to be the biggest obstacle for either Canberra or coaching?
You know, here's what it is, Doctor. First off, you have to have the vision. You've got to answer the question yourself. You've got to have the dream. You've got to have the why yourself. And when you have that, and this is real important, and I want you to. This is really a serious answer. Then you select people that share that dream or share that vision. A few years ago, I mean, you can't train someone who doesn't share your passion and your vision. A few years ago, I had a chance to spend a day with somebody that Kim knows, Les Schwab. And Les Schwab, for those of you who aren't in the Northwest, he started a chain of tire stores. He had 400 stores when he died in his mid-'80s, 7,000 employees. And if you pull onto one of his lots, they literally run to your car, and they're standing beside your window before you open the door. And they're clean. They're excited about what you're there. It's, how can we help you, sir? And I got to ask the man himself. I said, how do you train 7,000 people to share that kind of passion for service and tires? And if you can visualize this, Kim, he was in his early 80s at that time, and he's a big man. He'd already had several heart attacks. And he leaned back in his chair, and he put his feet up on the desk, and he says, are you kidding? You can't train them. You select them. And I've never forgotten that. And then I look around other business models, and, many of you have shopped at a Nordstrom, and they're known for service and quality. And, the average new hired person at Nordstrom lasts 4 days. And the deal is this. If you don't share the why with the Nordstrom family, then you don't get to work there.
Yep. Boy, and that's, Bill, I think, one of the, this is a challenging question, I think, for us as practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a challenge, I think, in any business. In any business, and I think it comes back to the good to great is having the right people on the bus, mentality. But one of the things in my practice was as a leader, the dentist has to be the leader here, and the dentist has to be real clear about their why. Mm-hmm. Why am I doing this? Because this isn't an easy thing anytime we make any system change in our practice, people hate change. Patients hate, what I'm hearing tonight is, my patients aren't going to like something that's new. My staff isn't going to like something that's new. I'm having to confront the challenge of moving people's cheese, right, changing what we do. if you're really clear about why you're doing this, and that's really important to you, everybody else will follow you. If you're the leader and you're clear about the why, but that's like if you're not clear about why you're doing this, it's probably not going to be, whatever it is, you're not going to be successful at it. But if you're really clear about why I'm doing this, why I think this is important, why I want to make a difference for my patients by practicing this way, the rest of your team will get right behind you because you're the leader, they respect you. They want to share your vision, but you've got to have that vision, and it's got to be clear. And if you do, they will get behind you. And the same thing will happen with your patients. I think you'll be, you shouldn't be, but you will be surprised at how readily your patients will accept this, and how actually, I think, proud and excited that they'll be that you're doing or that you're making these kind of changes in your practice. The patients that don't accept that aren't people you want as patients anyway. The people on your team that don't want to be a part of it really aren't part of your team. And so it's like, be just real clear about your vision and be real clear about your why, and you will be, and be the leader and articulate it. Here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I think this is important. And the clearer that you can be and the better you can articulate that as a leader, the more you're going to inspire both your team and your patients. And literally, in my practice, when I finally understood that and inspired my team, it was I had to get out of their way. It was literally I wasn't leading them anymore. It's like they were leading the charge, and this is something they I think embraced. And we're on this mission, and this is what we do, and here's why we do it, and here's who we are, and here's why we come here every day, and that was really exciting for me. So
the other thing too is I think so many doctors are afraid that if I tell my team what it is I really want, they may leave. Well, I can assure you that I have followed this in my business, and I've been in business now for myself for 43 years, and I can tell you, if you are clear on what you want to call it, your vision, your dream, your why, you never have to look for people to work. There are always people lined up that want to work with you. It's just absolutely amazing.
I was going to say that, Bill. It's really, when you're clear about that, clear about your why, people don't work for you because of what you do.
No.
They work for you. They work with you on your team because of your why as well, why you do it. And the people that share your why will find you, and you'll have a backlog of people that want to work with you. So I think what a great topic tonight, Bill.
That was great fun.
I appreciate so much having the opportunity to spend an hour visiting with you and sharing these ideas, kicking them back and forth. I hope that this was thought-provoking for people. I hope that we kind of maybe brought up some questions for you to ask. Certainly start with why, but to start examining, why you do what you do and how you do it and why do you do it that way. And maybe there's an alternative way for you to practice. Maybe there's an alternative way for you to design your life and your business and create your autonomy, rediscover your dream. Bill, you're a great resource. I can't think of a better coach to recommend people to. You've certainly had a huge influence in my own life over the years, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
This is a great book, and
it is a great book. I've read it.
I'm holding Start With Why in my hand, saying this is a great book. Obviously, you're looking at the Balance book that I wrote. That's a great book as well, by the way. But I would encourage you to read both of those books and then contact us and let us find out how we can help you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kim.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Blatchford and Dr. Kutsch. Thanks again for everyone that joined us tonight as well.
Yep. Thank you so much. I'll be in Denver at the Midwinter speaking all day Thursday. If you were on the call tonight, please come to my lecture and stop by and say hi.
I will be at the Yankee next week. I'd love to say come to my lecture, but it's been sold out for 3 weeks.
Well, aren't you are my hero, Bill Blatchford. So you guys all have a great week. Safe travels, and I'll be talking to you soon, Bill.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.